us through a session of cocktails and rum. And we're going to talk about rum stories, rum tiki drinks. And basically, we just got to try to figure out where it all began. Where did all this begin and what cocktails are we going to be doing? Wonderful. Brother, thanks for joining in the conversation. How'd you keep up on the time? Well, hi, brother. How are you doing? Good to see you.
How you doing, buddy?
How are you? How is everything?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm on day 10 of 14 of my mandatory quarantine. Just come back from Australia, so keeping myself locked indoors, which is slowly killing me. But yeah, well, no, not bad, not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I've been good. Just been indoors, doing more studying, doing more Instagram live feeds as usual, and just trying to keep the community up because I think that is way more important, especially during these stressful times.
Yeah, of course. Like, it's quite important for everyone to stay connected. There's so many people out there doing these little live streams and little masterclasses. It's really fun to be part of it. And yeah, it just shows how good the hospitality community is. Really, it's fun to see everyone pulling together, especially in something this hard and stressful. So yeah, it's good. All good vibes, really.
Yeah, so on Monday we actually had a very interesting conversation with Sly that has led to another conversation we're going to be having with Ian Barrell on Friday.
Oh, sick.
So,
Nice.
yeah, so I think this week I'm just putting it all out there so that guys can learn as much as possible and just get excited as well. I mean, just to keep the spirits up. So, I mean, for guys who don't know much about your story, feel free to share with us. Where did you begin?
So I'm still relatively new at the whole hospitality lark. I've been bartending for about 2.5 years, something like that. Fell out of the European Bartending School, a big international network of bartending colleges, essentially. So learned to bartend there on the sunny island of St Martin. Picked up a job at a little restaurant bar in London after that, got my first big gig at Merchant House, which is one of London's biggest rum, gin, and whiskey bars. So all three spirits, lots and lots of love for them. So that's where I sort of cut my teeth and learned properly how to actually bartend and fell in love with rum. I was there for about a year and a half, something like that, so a fairly long time. And then, so it would have been the summer of last year, I jumped ship to Trailer Happiness, which is probably London's most famous rum bar. Recently, saw yesterday, got nominated for top 10 in Europe for international high volume cocktail bar, according to Tales of Cocktail. So that is a very cool achievement. Very, very proud to be part of that. And yeah, so I left Trailer Happiness in the end of January to go traveling. That ended well, because obviously the world has since fallen apart. So now I'm back home, just relaxing. And yeah, so it's been 2.5 years of just non-stop bartending, learning rum, and yeah, just constantly learning.
That's amazing. I always I think the rum community, even despite the fact that it's small, it's always willing to share as much information or knowledge or experience or cocktail culture as much as possible. So today you see you're gonna be doing three cocktails? I'm super excited to see what you're gonna do. Yes.
Find up cheap little beverages. May as well kick off with one because it's always nice to, even though what time it's 1 o'clock, it's fine. So yeah, these are three little drinks that, I say together. Two of them are basically variations of other drinks which already exist and are already very popular, and one of them is a twist on one of my favourite classic tiki drinks. The one we're going to be starting with today is an espresso martini, but done different. So espresso martinis are delicious drinks. They get a lot of flack from a lot of people, but genuinely very, very nice drinks, done well. So the way that I'm varying it up is obviously with rum, because why wouldn't I? The rum I'm using is Eldorado 5. People
Awesome.
new to the rum world. This is a rum from Guyana. It is minimum of 5 years old. It is pot still rum, which is very, very heavy, very, very flavorful, and column still rum, which is lighter, a bit more delicate. So it's those two styles of rum blended into one beautiful package. So that we are going to add some Kahlua, which is a Mexican rum-based coffee liqueur as well. I'll measure that in. And then final magic touch. I made this the other day as a signature serve for Wrecking Coast Distillery, distillery down in Cornwall. This is a coffee and walnut syrup, which honestly just tastes like coffee and walnut cake. It is absolutely delicious. If you want to do this at home, it's literally just equal parts coffee, demerara sugar, then grind up some walnuts, let it steep overnight, and you get all the lovely nutty flavours coming together out of it. Throw some ice in. It's my very makeshift bar in my bedroom. Why not?
Yeah, shake it, shake it.
Smells fucking amazing. And then into your mum's finest crystal cut glassware. Strain that bad boy out.
Awesome.
So that is a very, very simple riff of a very classic cocktail. We used to do a very good spiced espresso rum martini at Fair Happiness that I believe had a bit of Falernum in it, as well as a like little secret rum blend, which is all very nice. So it's just a little build off that essentially. Very nice pick me up. Yeah, it's pretty fucking delicious, not gonna lie. Oh, the walnut really works in that. That's really nice. So yeah, that is drink number one. And that's how I like to make a lot of my drinks. Basically, take a cocktail that already exists, figure out something that's essentially really popular, understand why it's popular, lasted through the disco drink era, and people still love it.
So I don't know. Yeah.
You right? Lost you for a second.
Yeah, I lost you for a second, but yes, I can hear you. Which gets me talking. You're a big fan of coffee. Have you tried any coffee from the region, perhaps either from Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda?
I have. A few years ago, I went through a really, really big coffee phase. Basically, got experimenting with like doing my own espresso, buying single origin beans from all over the shop. That was a fun period of my life. I was drinking 5 espressos a day to not have a headache. Not the most healthy way to enjoy it. But yeah, I have a big, big appreciation for coffee now. Used to do a lot with coffee and cocktails at Merchant House as well. We worked very closely with some very decent coffee shops spread throughout London. So no, I do have a big love for coffee. It's something I've always wanted to learn more about. I always got to a point and then not quite got out. So definitely something to explore more.
Just before we get you to do a tiki drink, one of the questions I normally get from guys, what is tiki? Like, people don't seem to understand what tiki is all about. They all have some myths, stories. What do you think is tiki to you?
Tiki is interesting. That sort of question is kind of asking 2 questions in one. So you could say, what is tiki? Tiki, if you look at it traditionally, it's an American invention whereby you're taking the South Pacific, Southeast Asia, and sort of glamorizing it. Basically promote a sense of escapism. Like people have just come out of the Great Depression. There was into the 40s and 50s as well, during World War II and all that brought. So tiki in that context was a way to bring some sort of escapism back. A foreign land that people didn't really understand, and glamorizing it and making it a beautiful, wonderful thing that you can live on and like experience. Not necessarily in your own home, but you could go down to a local tiki bar or tiki restaurant, as was very common back in the 30s, and just get away from the havoc of life. And I feel like that original mentality has come forward through the years and sort of modified in a way. Like, you've got the 2 elements of it. You've got the very tropical element and you've got the escapism element. And I feel like these paths are kind of diverged a little bit. Like, you still have some very good tiki bars, like, for example, Lucky Cane in London. Is one of my favourites. I used to live up the road from it, so I spent far too many late nights enjoying myself in the escapism atmosphere there. And that still embraces not only just escapism, so you can walk from the high street of Islington all hustle and bustle into wonderful tropical paradise, but it's also a tropical paradise. It still celebrates that sort of mystical feel. And then you have other bars which treat escapism completely separately. There's a big movement in America currently. I forgot who wrote the article, but there was a really good article about the problems with tiki and the kind of cultural appropriative side to tiki as a culture and tiki as a trend. People sort of erring on the side of going to more exotic and more tropical rather than tiki exclusively. So you're having a bit more respect for the cultures where, for example, rum actually comes from. So one of the biggest hang-ups that I often hear about tiki is, well, tiki is all about rum drinks, right? Rum, yeah, they go hand in hand. But rum from the Caribbean and tiki is fundamentally Southeast Asian influence. So those things don't really marry. So I feel like in the modern era, tiki,
Yes.
I feel like slightly as well. Tiki is still very much about escapism. It's very much about finding a little corner where you can relax and be separate from the rest of busy modern life and still relax. And I feel like tropical culture and Caribbean culture is still going to have a big influence on that. But I feel like people are being a lot more mindful and a lot more, sort of culturally sensitive towards it. So people are still trying to escape, but they're not doing it in the same sort of through the girls and unconquered tribes, people that used to be so prevalent in the 30s. And it's more about, well, exploring new flavors, exploring new concepts. And yeah, so I feel like escaping is what's really, really important, and exploring something new that you might not otherwise get to experience. That's what's really important for tiki, especially in modern culture.
Okay. So what's the next drink gonna be like?
Sorry?
And what is the inspiration behind the next drink?
Next drink's inspiration. So again, it's taking a look at that tiki tropical theme, taking a look at different drinks and changing them. So this is one I thought about the other night. I managed to get hold of a bottle of sherry because I love sherry. I've got kind of so good for that, for introducing me to the wonderful world of sherry. I'm thinking about, well, the particular sherry I've got is a Manzanilla, which is very, very dry, very briny, very sort of savoury. So basically the thought process was, how can I work this into something wonderful? And essentially, if you take a lot of classic whiskey drinks and a lot of very old gin drinks as well, they're often a partnership of a spirit, so gin, whiskey, whatever, a fortified wine, so essentially a vermouth, and something else. So I've basically taken that premise and sort of linked it into a more, how can I say, sort of a more exotic take. So next drink, may as well get cracking with it. So I've got a mixing glass here. Get some ice in that bad boy. So we'll kick off with, of course, rum again. This is Angostura's 5-year-old rum. So Angostura, and people that make the wonderful Angostura aromatic bitters, and who made my wonderful tea towel on the bar. These guys are a column still only producer. They have 2 quite large column stills in Trinidad.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. Last year, I won the Angostura Global Cocktail Comp for the UK. So in middle of February, I was able to shoot out to Trinidad and go and see the distillery. I met some wonderful people. Big shout out to Marv Cunningham from the Bahamas, who came away with the global trophy. Absolute gem. Big shout out to all the wonderful people I met. There's too many to name. But essentially, I digress. Angostura makes very light, very easy drinking style of rum. This rum is then thrown into a bourbon barrel for about 5 years, sometimes a bit more. Blended back together to make some wine. It's very dry, it's very floral, lots of interesting flavours despite being column stilled and despite being quite light. Into that, I'm going to throw in 15 ml of Manzanilla. So not very much, but just enough that the sort of brininess and the saltiness will counteract the big floral notes. And then finally, to wrap it all around to make it sort of more rounded finished drink, I'm going to add some Bekarovka. So Bekarovka has become very popular in a lot of modern tiki drinks. It's essentially a bitter liqueur, so yeah, a bitter liqueur from Czechia, formerly Czech Republic, with a lot of sort of cinnamon to it. So you think cinnamon, baking spice, sort of nutmeg, cloves, that sort of thing. All of that wrapped into a nice little package with a little bit of sweetness to it as well. And that sort of cinnamon and exotic spice is something you would find in a lot of old-style tiki drink. So, of course, the zombie calls for cinnamon syrup. Oh, God, my mind's gone blank. Loads and loads of classic tiki cocktails call for cinnamon and nutmeg and all these lovely spices. So essentially, if we can take a cinnamon element and just throw in some more bitter, some more herbs, you get a much more layered, much more complex drink out of it. That is delicious.
So as you do that, talk to us about the London rum scene. How is it?
The London rum scene?
Yeah.
London rum scene is good. It's, well, obviously talking pre-start of March. Yeah, it's good. It's one of the certainly one of the best cities in the UK to visit for rum. I know there's very, very good rum bars and very good cocktail scenes around the rest of the UK as well. It's just a bit of lemon zest on top of that. But London is certainly still a big hub for it. Like I say, three of the biggest rum bars in the UK probably are based in London. So you've got Trail of Happiness, you've got Black Parrot, and La Cocaine, all of which are really big collections of rum, all very focused on tropical culture and exciting cocktails. That being said, there are plenty of wonderful cocktail bars outside of London. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the Brig in Falmouth. Just see a lot of posts about, a lot of news about, which is very, very exciting. But yeah, London rum scene is growing. It's been growing. I'd say it's hard for me to look back too far because I've only been in it like 2.5 years. So, but I feel like I've joined right as the curve is beginning to pick up. Like in the growth that I've seen in 2.5 years, it's gone from people just ordering rum and coke, just ordering like, I like dark rum, what do you have, to more people sitting down and actually having a conversation, sort of treating it like people treated gin as well. So when I came into the London bar scene, gin was the big thing. Everyone was asking, oh, what particular botanicals does this have? What do you pair it with? Which tonic should I have? What garnish should I have? And there was a very big dialogue going on in a lot of bars between bartenders and guests saying like, well, this is this gin, this is how you should treat it. And I feel like that style of conversation is now happening more with rum. People are now caring about where the rum comes from, what it's made of, and how best to drink it as well. People are not just saying, oh, I'll have this dark rum with Coke or this dark rum and ginger beer. Like, those are still common orders and there's nothing wrong with them. But people are pushing boundaries a bit more, getting more excited about more interesting cocktails as well.
So if you had to say, what are the top 3 rum brands that are favored by the consumers in London right now?
That's a good question. And it's kind of hard for me to answer for the biggest reason, are we calling spiced rum a rum? Because I would say no.
No, I mean, spiced rum is not even a rum. So let's not talk about spice. Let's just generally talk about rum being rum.
I would say certainly at Trail of Happiness, big brands have got name called a lot. Bacardi. Bacardi's been the big rum brand for a long time and will continue to be the big rum brand for a very long time. So people would often name call that, especially with their new expressions, such as Bacardi Diaz came out fairly recently. That got a hugely successful reception. On the more sort of hot still side, on the more sort of artisanal side, there's a lot of talk about Foursquare at the moment. I feel like with Foursquare, a lot of the people that I find talking about it and requesting it are sort of saying it because they've heard of it. They know then I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, my mate has spoken about Foursquare rums. Do you have any?" In which case, yes, here is like 5 million rums, which are all absolutely delicious and cracking. So there's been a lot of talk generated about Foursquare and about their process and kind of purity of their rum, which is very, very exciting to see. Again, other Barbados classics like Mount Gay, for instance, are still very, very popular. And I'd have to say Plantation as well. Plantation continues to be a bartender's favourite. Their entire core range seems to cover every base you could possibly want to give someone a rum. Their regular original dark is just a perfectly nice mixing rum that anyone can sort of get on with. They've got the OFTD for people that like something really big and powerful, and it's very, very fun to use. Even down to their sort of more exotic expressions like the Extreme range or the Zymaca Jamaican rum, which is absolutely delicious as well. So probably I'd say Bacardi, just for name calling sake, Plantation, just because everyone loves it. Loads of bartenders are plugging it at the moment and really selling it to people, and Foursquare for people that are like hearing about sort of, how can I say it, not like the next level of rum, that's a really like obscene thing to say really, but like people are hearing about new sort of single origin, authentic. People are thinking more authentic, less sugar, less colouring, less messing about with the actual spirit, and more letting the spirit shine. That's the sort of thing that people are turning to Foursquare for. And like I say, there's a lot of word of mouth going on, people passing between, going from, oh, well, you like the Plantation Barbados 5-star, have you heard about Dawley's 5-year-old, for example?
And the thing is, okay, the thing is, you can't actually really compare Plantation to, for example, the Foursquare series or the Dooley series or any series that comes from Foursquare, because literally everyone knows that Foursquare is like on its own competition, on its own level. You don't necessarily take a Foursquare range for a cocktail. Predominantly, it's more or less on the sipper side rather than, you know.
That very much depends, in my opinion. So obviously, when people think Foursquare, a lot of people like us will think immediately exceptional cask series. So then we're talking about things like Foursquare's Zinfandel finish, Criterion, Sagacity, all these lovely, big, bold, rich, flavorful rums. That's what a lot of people in the rum community will think when you say Foursquare. They'll immediately go, bam, these things. And you're right, these aren't normally what you'd reach for if you're just mixing a drink, throwing together a cocktail. You wouldn't necessarily reach something like this, mostly because they are top shelf. They are pricey little numbers, but my God, they are delicious little numbers as well. That being said, if Foursquare was simply a super premium brand and that's all they did,
no, but like, let's
actually they have other things as well, such as the Real McCoy range, for instance, is absolutely delicious.
Okay, when you look at, for example, the Veritas, which is like their standard range for a clear, what people call, quote unquote, a clear rum that you can use for a daiquiri. Its price point is not on the same standard as probably your Bacardi, but it's an amazing rum to use. You know, it's like the baseline for what a daiquiri should be in terms of the texture and the complexity that it delivers on the plate.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, it is a price point higher, absolutely, but it's that much better in quality as well. The way that Bacardi and other column still runs are manufactured, they do serve a purpose, and they can be tasty when used correctly. I remember we had at Trail Happiness, we had Don Q in the rail for our pouring white cocktail rum. Thank you, Olga. But for our pouring rum, we had Don Q because it's a delicious column rum. It's still got lots of flavour and it works for what it does. If you don't want to go up a level and say, well, I want something a bit more complex, a bit more interesting, then yeah, if you put down a little bit more money, then things like Veritas come out. Things like Dawley's 3-year-old, and all these wonderful rums can come out. Excuse me. But just because they're slightly more expensive doesn't mean you can't then mix them, and you can't then, for example, work with a brand. Say like, okay, we want to do a special menu with all Foursquare rums. That can easily be sorted out in the bar world.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me, perhaps?
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, like, if people have a much better quality product, people are much happier to pay for it and much more. People are willing to pay more for something which is more premium, and it's the same.
Exactly. I
It's the
mean,
same
like
way
for
in
me,
machine shopping.
it all boils down to the quality of the product.
Yeah, exactly.
If the quality of the product is good, then the cocktail will be good.
Yeah,
In the end of the day.
I feel like I can't remember who said it first, but this quote I'm definitely stealing from someone, which was you should be able to mix any spirit you like, have any spirit in any drink, so long as you make the spirit better. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of people think if you take Plenipotentiario, for example, and just throw that in a rum and coke, you're wasting all that flavour. You're not making the drink better. But if you then take plenty, put it in something like old fashioned, then you're definitely improving the drink. You can make that a much more better, much more sippable drink. Not that plenty is unsippable; it's absolutely delicious. It's wonderful stuff. But that's the kind of example how you should mix things. Make the base spirit better rather than just throwing together because it tastes nice.
So how is and talking about COVID-19, how are guys handling the whole situation in London? Any positive news coming out or what? How is it looking like?
It's looking like it's going to take a while with the whole corona issue. The curve appears to be flattening, which is very good. I don't want to talk too. Doesn't sound like I have too much authority over the whole situation, so I've got as much news as everyone else does. But it looks like the numbers are starting to settle out a bit, which is nice. Like I say, the response from the hospitality community has been amazing. There are countless bars have been putting together cocktail delivery programs, which is definitely keeping everyone's morale up. There's been lots of efforts for charity. Big shout out to the Benevolent, who have put together a fund for bartenders who have found themselves just suddenly out of work and suddenly can't pay their bills. So the whole community spirit has kind of grown, which I definitely think is a very, very wonderful thing. And I feel like through it all, when this is eventually over, in however long it takes, the good news is people are going to come together much, much stronger. I feel like as soon as these bars reopen their doors, everyone is going to just be going to take each other a lot more seriously. It's going to be a lot more love shown, I feel. They're going to have a lot more respect for each other coming out of this and going in. The hospital scene in London has always been wonderful and always been loving and caring. So I'm excited to see the end of it and just see all my mates again and just actually celebrate and have a drink together, finally. I feel like
that would be very good.
And treat it for the wonderful joy that it actually is. So, we're getting there.
What's other cocktail you were supposed to do?
So it would be wrong of me to come on and make drinks without making a Mai Tai. So people always, like, as a bartender, the number one question you receive is, "Oh, what's your favorite drink? What do you recommend?"
Mai Tai is like, okay, so for me, I would say that the three classics that people are supposed to know is the Mai Tai, the daiquiri, and the Jungle Bird as a baseline for rum.
Interesting.
Because if you can, then I can. Pardon?
I was saying, like, we don't see a lot of Jungle Birds that much anymore, but they are really good drinks.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So if you walk into a restaurant and someone cannot make you a Mai Tai or a daiquiri or a Jungle Bird, then I don't think I'll take anything else from that menu. Because those are like simple drinks that people should know predominantly.
Yeah,
and they have not less. And they don't have more than 3 ingredients.
I remember when I was working at Merchant House, we had one of our training programs was about 6 drinks that you need to know, and if you can make these 6 drinks, then in theory you can make any other drink. So I did enjoy that. But yeah, Mai Tai for me is just classic. And there are so many variations you can do on it. Like playing with the actual rum blend is so much fun. You can basically make it suit any sort of person. I know one of the biggest raging debates that always happens when I mention Mai Tai around people that like rum is, well, how can you replicate Ray and Nephew 15 or Ray and Nephew 17, which were the original rums used in the 1930s Mai Tai by Trader Vic. I've not yet tried any Ray and Nephew 17, so I don't really know what it would taste like. But having met people who have tried it, and there's countless blogs out there of people who have written down like tasting notes and spelling notes and stuff. And I know what sort of blend I would use in an ideal world. It would definitely be something funky and Jamaican, probably something like Hampton-Estate because it's delicious. Some kind of big, dirty column still rum. So a lot of things out of Belize, out of Traveller's Distillery, they make some wonderful, wonderful liquids. Definitely that would go in there. And a big funky agricole with a bit of age on it, or a cane juice rum with a bit of age in it. I remember when I was in London, my favourite blend to use was the Hampton Estate Overproof. The Traveller, one of the single barrel Traveller's editions, I think it was single barrel selection, SBS, Traveller's Distillery, and Savannah 5-year-old. Those rums blended together, 2020, make it absolutely killer. Unfortunately, I don't live in London anymore, so I will use what I've got, but you can still make a pretty decent Mai Tai out of it, even if you just use something like, even Gosling's makes a nice Mai Tai. There are very few rums which will make you a bad Mai Tai, to be fair. So in this case, along with my triple sec, and a little bit of orgeat, which I have down here. Throw some lime in as well. Hiding.
So that's a Mai Tai that Simon is making, Mike. That's a Mai Tai. The classic Mai Tai that has exactly. So the Mai Tai is a one drink that
rum, orange liqueur, so either triple sec or curacao, orgeat syrup, which is kind of like an almond syrup. Monin do a very, very good orgeat where you can make your own at home, and lime juice. All that shaken together. The rums that I'm using Topanga Gold rum for the most of it. So Topanga comes from South Africa. It is a cane juice rum. My parents got this for me last year when they went and visited. I really love the marketing on it. It's called Rum Africa. Like, that made me laugh when I saw it. I really enjoy that. And probably the one rum I can't live without. Big up Ray.
Ray Nephew is special, and it's once you take it, you never go back. I mean, it's so interesting that rums from Jamaica, especially the rums that have lots of danda and overproof funkiness, once you taste them, it's like you can't think of a better rum to go by.
Those kind of sort of funk bombs are incredible. Like, if you ferment something for that long and treat it with that much sort of like respect and goes that crazy with it, you get a wonderful, wonderful product out of it. Most Jamaican rums will have that kind of element to it. I know Hampton use a muck pit, which helps grow those flavours and grow those esters. Worthy Park do very, very long fermentation, so anything from rum bar, anything from Worthy Park, anything from Hampton are good. Ray and Nephew is probably the biggest, boldest rum that from the Appleton range. So Appleton is a subsidiary, of Ray and Nephew. So any of those, and you'll get all the wonderful big flavours, which I feel like are essential.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I know you know that I love the Mai Tai. We appreciate it. Yes, it's my standard cocktails for every time I visit a restaurant or visit my friends. I think I always try to see if they can make for me a Mai Tai or a daiquiri. Because if they can't, then what are they doing behind the bar?
I feel like it varies. Different bars are after different things. Like, you have to know what kind of audience the bar's playing at. So, for instance, if I just go into a random New York dive bar, I'm all about spill that everywhere. That's fucking delicious. If you go into a New York dive bar, then you're probably not going to be drinking cocktails. You're going to be after beers, shots, easy, nice relaxed times because of that vibe. However, if I do walk into a good cocktail bar, then yes, I expect them to be able to make Mai Tais and daiquiris and things like this. So yeah, it all depends. Like different bars are clearly aimed at different people, and you sort of the bar is playing to an audience, and it's kind of your response as a guest to sort of be that audience. Like by all means, challenge people. Not saying don't drink what you want, don't drink what you don't want. Sorry, what? Yeah, don't drink what you don't want. Do try and drink what you want, but know sort of where you are when you do go into these bars.
Yeah, I think, but generally, if it comes to the classics, it's always really important to just know the basics. So, for example, if you're talking even for something as simple as a daiquiri or a Negroni or what, yeah, it all boils down to, can you make it? Because it's a simple three ingredient thing, and if you can't,
yeah,
then it's just,
No, I agree. There should bartending is like any other profession. There should really be a minimum standard for it. I do definitely agree with that. But like I say, that standard is highly dependent on who's behind the bar, who's running the bar, what the ethos of the bar is. There is so much. Got another question. Here you mentioned almond syrup or liqueur. It's an almond syrup. So you can get almond liqueurs like amaretto. There was a wonderful period in history where amaretto would find itself in zombies and Mai Tais and things like that. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Almond liqueur, also known as orgeat, almond syrup, also known as orgeat, is just delicious by itself. You get the wonderful nutty notes, the classic marzipan. There's normally a bit of rose and orange blossom in there as well, which helps make it a very, very complex, tasty ingredient. And you only need a tiny splash of it as well. You don't need loads.
But I have to say that the Falanum is way better. Like, if I had to choose between like Orgeat and Falanum, I would constantly choose Falanum. Because even if I wasn't drinking a cocktail, Falanum works really well with coffee in the morning.
Falanum in coffee is one of the greatest discoveries I accidentally made last year. Yeah, Falanum is wonderful. I am kind of on team Richard Seal when it comes to Falanum, which says that John D. Taylor's is probably just the best and the classic. That Velvet Falanum is much better than any others I've tried. I've tried a fair few. I see a lot of people doing their own homemade Falanums. That's fine. So long as you're staying true to it, then yeah, I see no issue with it. Like people bartend, people experiment, that's fine. And I thoroughly support that. But just classic John D. Taylor's is just wonderful. But yeah, John D. Taylor's Falernum, I feel like it's a very different animal to orgeat as well. Like I wouldn't put Falernum in something like a Mai Tai instead, even though it's got those nutty, winey, wonderful floral notes in it. It is a different animal. Like it's a delicious animal, but in my mind, I'd stick that slightly more in the spiced liqueur section rather than a spiced syrup section, if that makes sense.
So yeah, like generally, like, so if you are making a drink, and I didn't want to use like spice rum because spice rum also has its own reputation, I'll probably just use Falanum and a blended rum. Probably just do my own in-house blend just to get the spice or the notes that I'm looking for. Because I don't feel like we need to create more spice rums in the market. There's no point. Like if I wanted to make something with spices, I just have the spices in front of me. Why would I need to buy something at $45, for example? Yet you could make it in the house.
You're saying
because the best line of a spice rum is just that you need to have good rum and have spices. So you could as simple as well take Red Nephew and think of the spices that will work with Red Nephew and use that to create your own spice rum.
Like, I agree with that to an extent. Like I say, I think home bartending is a wonderful thing. I think more people should do it. My number one recommendation to anyone who ever comes to the bar and asks, I want to get into bartending, like, how do you make all these wonderful flavors? How do you do it? My number one recommendation to them, do what I did. Pick up a book, take it home, and start playing around with stuff. While, yes, you can, definitely make your own sort of spice rums and spice liqueurs that will fit your flavor profile, fit the particular drink you're trying to make. The whole thing with rum and spirits as general things, you have to remember it's an industry. It's ultimately people are here to make products and sell them, and so there is going to be an influx of spice rum. I feel like spice rums are going to be, well, they're predicted to explode in 2020. They're probably going to explode in 2021 as well, because they offer consumer something that they want. I've had this a very similar discussion to this with a lot of gin fanatics back when I was at Merchant House, where people would say, well, if you just wanted a pink gin or a sweet gin, just take a really classic gin like a beekeeper, and then just add sugar or just add Angostura bitters into it. Like, why do we need all these pink gins? Why do we need all these flavoured gins? And I feel like there's a section of the drinking community and a section of the rum community who will have that opinion for spiced rum, and then there's everybody else. There's the other 90% of consumers who make up the majority of our target audience ultimately, who love spiced rum and really enjoy something that's sweet, easy to drink, taste of cinnamon cloves in heaven. I will only slightly ashamedly say that the first bottle of alcohol I ever legally bought was Captain Morgan Spice Gold, because when I was 18, that was incredible. For me, that just, obviously now that I look at it, you think something like, oh, it's just a vanilla bomb, it's just sugar, it's nothing. I can say that now after drinking pure single rums and heavy pot still rums for 2 years. I can now look at that as an informed person and say, well, yeah, fine. If I wanted to do that now, I would take some vanilla beans, throw it in some Ray and Nephew, and have at you. But the majority consumer isn't that person. The majority consumer sees what they like on the shelf, reads the label, goes, oh, that looks nice, I will try this, and it will probably work for them. And
But sometimes
that's a good way to then get into people, because then, if there are those spice rums on the market which we don't necessarily like, that's fine. That's our choice as consumers as well. But then a consumer will come into my bar and say, a guest will come into my bar and say, oh, I had this really nice spice rum. Can you do me something similar? And I'll be like, yeah, cool. Corn and oil. So corn and oil is just Barbados rum, so something like Mount Gay or Foursquare, or St. Nicholas Abbey. A little bit of this spiced falernum syrup, bit of ice, squeeze of a lime coin if you feel like it. Essentially, very, very similar to a rum old-fashioned.
Yeah.
But you get those lovely spice notes. And I was drinking and going, wow, that's really, excuse me, it's really creamy, it's really rich. It's got all those lovely vanilla notes that I'm after, but it's not a spice rum. At that point, you've then educated someone. You've taken someone from one place and put them in a new bracket. But if they didn't have that option in the first place, how would they have even got into it? How would you then even begin to introduce the concept of what rum and falernum is? So I feel like these are all necessary steps if we want rum as a category to grow and we want more people to appreciate what we consider to be good rum. We need these starting blocks. We need people to get onto the ladder somehow, and that is by far the best way for people to actually do it.
But sometimes the biggest challenge you have is when consumers, start with artificial, quote unquote, artificial products. So like in the gin market, we have artificial gins, things that either have been flavored after, and that's also in rum, where you have rums that are extra sweet. So it becomes really hard for someone, especially like you and I, who have gone through that experience, to understand how possible it is to accept, for example, rums that have dosage. For example, stuff that has extra sugar, because I wouldn't find it palatable in my tongue. But then you find that there are companies like this rum called Boom Boom. They go on ahead and say that, it's a premium rum, and they continue to market that at the expense of educating the consumer.
Absolutely. But
and don't you think that is wrong? Because that's cheating. How can you pay like here in Kenya it is fucking $70?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous money. Very expensive, and it's not very nice, in my opinion. But that's unfortunately the market we live in. The market demands sweet drinks. What can I say? One of my favourite rums, which has got a lot of sugar added into it, is Diplomatico. I've been to a lot of trainings with Diplomatico. I've met the world famous Nelson, who's a wonderful guy. And Diplomatico have always sweetened their rums. They've always thrown sugar in it. It's obvious. You try Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva. which was a big name caller when I was back at Merchant House. We go, oh yeah, the one in the green bottle, Diplo Rosé. It's delicious, it's wonderful, it's smooth. And if you have the time, if you have the energy, you can sit down with them and say, oh yeah, by the way, it's got this much sugar. But what Diplomatico have done, they've taken that on board, they've taken that feedback, and that was part of their training. They are very, very open about it. If you go to any Diplomatico rep, they will say, yeah, we add sugar to our rum. This is how we do it. We have this molasses spirit blend, which we put in at different levels, depending on which product it is. And the finishing argument is always, isn't it delicious? And Diplomatico is wonderful, wonderful drink. Eldorado 12, very, very similar story. It's an older rum, it's a Guyanese rum. It has got sugar thrown into it, absolutely. The difference between the two, Diplomatico, very open and honest, is like, yeah, we put sugar in our rum, so what? You're still drinking it. People like Eldorado, some other more notable brands as well, are less open about it. They're more secretive and wouldn't like that knowledge getting out there. But on the flip side, Eldorado also do non-sugared rums. They have their single still releases. They have a lot of independent bottlings. So the choice is still there for the consumer. The difference is the consumer really likes a sweet product. Like, people love sweet drinks. You can't deny it. Let's say, go back to the espresso martini. It's a delicious, crushable, sweet drink.
No, like the whole point.
More money. That money can then be filled into marketing, and the process repeats. And then it falls up to us as bartenders and as rum lovers to break that cycle and say, cool, you've got into the rum world. You've found these things that you love. Let's break the chain. Let's say you really love Bumbu. Cool. It's a Barbados rum. Big inverted commas, Barbados rum. Here is Mount Gay XO. Which do you prefer? Why do you prefer them? Do you like this one because it's still got those, because it's got that barrel finish, it's still got that sort of nice grapey sweet note to it? Or do you still like the artificial sugar bomb? If you still like the artificial sugar bomb, that's fine. Then ultimately, maybe that just means this particular category, this particular kind of spirit isn't necessarily for you. And that's fine. The big thing about all spirit nerds in all categories is they get so hung up on their spirit as being the one true spirit. And I'm firmly in that camp with rum, don't get me wrong. I love rum, I think it is the one true spirit, it's great. But there are people that will disagree, and there are people that will try it and still don't like it. There are people that will always stay with their bourbons, or stay with their peaty Scotch whiskey, or will stay with their pink gin and lemonade. That's fine. That's ultimately the choice. Ultimately, we need to try and educate people, for sure. And I think it's good that rum is gaining more popularity, and big rum bars like Trailer, like Black Parrot, are becoming more prevalent, and people are putting more rums on their shelf so that we can expose this wonderful. There's so much variation. Let's get it out there. Let's start showing people. But it does take time. It takes effort, and you can't win everybody. Like, some people sometimes just don't like certain things. You can cook me a mushroom in 100 different ways. I still won't like mushrooms at the end of it. You can't convince me that I will eventually like mushrooms. And some people just won't like rum. People will just always like sweet things. So it depends. I get the argument, and I get that marketing it as something that is a pure rum, for example. Like, if somebody say they're making rum to the same degree and with the same level of care as Foursquare are, they are just liars, just straight up. That's just not true. But they're also targeting different audiences as well.
So
never as black and white as these people are good, these people are bad. Nothing
so
like this.
the only challenge I'll say that comes with rums that are from the Spanish regions predominantly, they're the ones who are actually on the highest list of dosage in terms of sugar, and so consumers predominantly have the taste of these rums from a very young age. And so when they get into the industry and then they taste stuff that doesn't have sugar, like Appleton 12, or they taste something like the rum Longitude 6 years, they're actually very shocked because they don't understand how possible is it that this thing that's made out of sugar isn't this sweet. Yet what they are experiencing was predominantly a sweetened version of it. And sometimes even when you're doing training, it's very hard to convince someone that this is a rum, especially if you're doing a blind test, because they end up tasting and they're like, this can't be rum. Because in their minds, it's like, this is, you know.
I remember when I first tried Claret, I literally spat it out at the person who gave it to me. This is one of my first times at a merchant house, and I was given a glass of Clarion Vival. It was a Clarion Vival. And this was at a time when my favourite rum was, actually, weirdly enough, it was Appleton 12. Didn't know why at the time, but it was Appleton 12, closely followed by Diplomatico Mantuano. And these were the rums that I drank. It was just like, yeah, it's heavy, it's delicious, it's sweet. Didn't have a clue what sugar and rum meant at the time. And someone gave me some Clarion Vival. I was like, cool, this is what rum made with sugarcane juice tastes like. And I literally spat it out at him. Why would anyone drink that? It doesn't make sense. I don't know. Fast forward 4 more months, and then I come back to it and try it again. And go, yeah, that's all right. I sort of get this now. Like, oh yeah, it does taste like sugarcane. Come back to it 4 months later. That's all I'm throwing at people. I'm saying like, yes, daiquiris with agricoles, daiquiris with sugarcane juice rum. Yeah. It takes time. We used to do a lot of masterclasses at Merchant House as well. And one of the biggest barriers we ever faced was jumping people off Spanish style rum, as we liked to call it back then, and into the British and French styles. And ultimately, you just got to do it in the right way. You've got to introduce people gradually. People like particular 23-year-old rums, fine. Give them Havana Celestium de Maestros. That is delicious. That is column still. It's much less sweet. And then from that, cool. Send them to Barbados. Start with something blended. Like, make it a gradual curve, and then you can hit the Jamaican. You can start with Appleton. You can introduce a bit of Worthy Park. Introduce a bit of Hampton. Take someone, pick them up from something very sweet, and just dunk them into the high Esteban. It's never going to work. It's too much of a clash. So you need to work that way. You need to work that difference. You need people to be spreading the word of mouth of how good they are. Like, I could preach for days about how good Jamaican rum is.
But sometimes, like when I do taste, like when I do the tasting session, and I'll say this because it's something I actually find very interesting. I love agricoles, and because that's why I predominantly started. So the fresh, the vegetal, the grassy stuff. And whenever you put something that's 55 or 65%, most of the guys have never really tasted what that is like. And it's really interesting that guys are blown away because it's like it's not what they're expecting.
No,
and even when you're trying to push such portfolios in front of a bar, most bar owners, because they're not so used to a product that is that high, they end up thinking that maybe that it's not legal or whatever it is. And it's always very interesting because until you show them how to use it in a cocktail, most of the people are actually very hesitant.
Exactly, but that's the point. Until you show them, you have to show them. You have to educate them. You have to say, like, for example, this is Ray and Nephew. Would I just give this to someone as a shot? Yes, I would. But would your average bartender do that? No. Look at this. Like, the amount of people just on the street, I was like, what's your favourite rum? Oh, I really love Ray and Nephew. The general response is, what is wrong with you? But if I say,
But that's...
no, this is how you mix it, this is how you make it drinkable, then they go, yeah, no, I get that now, I get that.
Like if you make a daiquiri, with a Ray and Nephew or Ramfire, it takes the daiquiri to another level in terms of not just strength, but the complexity that you get.
But it doesn't necessarily make it a good thing. That depends entirely on the consumer. Like I say, our house rum at Trail Happiness was Don Q Cristal, which is just easy drinking. It's vanilla, it's flowers, it's delicious in a daiquiri. And as much as I love Ray daiquiris and rum bar daiquiris and things like this, if you are just sat at the bar, you've got 5 minutes, I'm on my lunch break, can I just have a quick daiquiri? And you want something that's quick and easy, yeah, go for Don Q. It's delicious. Like, they are different drinks, they are for different times, and they are ultimately for different people. The conversation needs to happen, and like conversations like this need to happen so that people can then understand it better and then say, well, actually, I'll give it a go, I'll try it. Here's a drink that I found with Ray Nephew in it, let's give it a go, let's see what happens. And then you can start to diversify people. But it's a slow battle, it takes time. It's the exact same in any drinks category, any food category. A lager drinkers with people like me saying, no, ale is the best thing in the world. Everyone's like, no, just stick to macaroni, thanks. it takes time to wean them onto it. Wine drinkers, everyone loves a Sauvignon Blanc, everyone loves a Pinot Noir. Can you convince them to try a Cabernet Sauv? Can you convince them to try a wild fermented Riesling? Eventually, you have to take them on that journey, and it will take time. But you have to understand as well, we've been on that journey as well. It's very easy for us to look at ourselves now and where we are and how much we know, and just like, well, yeah, we know it. Why don't you? Why don't you know it? But for me, it's taken 2.5 years to even get to this point, and I'm still only at the tip of the iceberg. I'm barely scraping it, and it's been 2.5 years of me constantly asking questions and constantly trying things. And a lot of people, I have that luxury as a bartender by profession. I have that luxury. I am surrounded by the alcohol industry constantly. I have so much time I can dedicate to learning and understanding and developing my palate, which your normal person who gets one Friday night a week to go out and have a good time for 2 hours doesn't really have. So then it's up to us. We have a responsibility then to the consumer, to people visiting bars, to say, well, actually, I've spent so much time learning this. I'm not just going to throw you in the deep end and say, no, you should only drink Ray and F. You should only be drinking single barrel Hampton bottled with this one person from this one state in Kentucky. Like, you should take one. What do you like to drink? How can I start you on a journey that I think you'll enjoy towards that sort of target? So they'll come in one week, say, yeah, I really like bamboo. So you give them some bamboo to start and then something else. And then slowly over a period of weeks, you'll build that person, you'll build that appreciation within that person. But it takes time. There are countless people that I can name who I've forced into that journey and tried to, no, rum is great, put that gin down, you want to drink rum. And it just doesn't work. You have to do it in the right way. So it's a very gradual, very slow process. And
Especially,
yes,
yeah, especially with the young guys who are coming up. We always distance with them so that they understand, and they get to a place where they can actually educate better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's less about forcing a dogma and less about, because ultimately, when it all boils down to it, it's all just opinion. It's just opinion that we think Jamaican rum is the shit. It's just opinion that we love agriculture. That doesn't make it inherently right or wrong. It's opinion. And to change anyone's opinion takes time. If you just throw an opinion at someone, it will just bounce off them. People are naturally resistant to change. You have to work that in slowly and build it over time.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because even when you do mezcal for the first time, most people really don't understand. You understand mezcal as a word or as an explanation, but then when you actually do a tasting for the mezcal portfolio and the different agaves, most people are actually left shocked because they've not really seen how an agave can be that varied in terms of even production-wise or taste-wise.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, unfortunately, a lot of consumers also just don't really care. They want something which is delicious. I was reading, there's an article in Discard, one of the new booze magazines that's come out. I'm very bad with names. Someone wrote, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was akin to being a good bartender is knowing that a family barbecue is not the time to pull out your mezcal last word, but a time to pull out a bag of cheap Sauvignon Blanc. Because mezcal last words are delicious, but if you're at a family barbecue, your audience just wants to have a nice time, wants to relax. They don't want necessarily big, complex, weird flavors and artisanal this and to know so much. It's not necessarily right or wrong, that's just how the environment is. In general, should people have more care for their spirits? Yeah, people should have more care in a lot of things in their life, and education is a big part of that. But education is slow, education takes time.
So we have 20 seconds to go.
All right.
Last words.
Wrap it up. What are you saying?
So I guess we'll have to come back and just finish up as we. Hi, what's up? So we just